Nicely done.
Thank you.
Welcome back to I'll Be Right Back Horror with Nadia, and today I am going to be giving my review of MaXXXine. I just saw it last night, so I have some thoughts on it. But before we get into that, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I do horror reviews, and I also do a new segment on the horror genre every Tuesday. And if you feel inclined to support the channel, there is a link in the description below to buy me a cup of coffee. That would be really appreciative. Now, for this review, I will give my initial spoiler free thoughts and then I will give a spoiler warning to go into more details about the movie. So look out for that spoiler warning. If you want to mark it and then come back, see if we align, see if we've got the same taste. So now let's get into Ty West MaXXXine.
No spring clean.
Maxine fucking Minx.
MaXXXine is the third film in a trilogy by Ty West, with 2022's Pearl and X, and now with the final film MaXXXine, released last night. Now, going into this, I was pretty intrigued. I had recently seen both X and Pearl in the last few weeks, and I was surprised of how much I enjoy the two, especially X. I would say X is probably my favorite of the two. However, Mia Goth gives a stellar performance in both, especially her monologue in Pearl. And this girl works. Knowing that Pearl was filmed right after X with the complete use of both sets is a feat. Like, Ty West said, production team only had 3 weeks to transform the world of X into Pearl. And that, again, is a huge feat. If anyone listening who's worked in the film industry understands the brutal task of pre-production, I'm sure you gasped as much as I did when I was reading that.
I always wanted to be in that line of work. I always wanted to be famous.
Now, for MaXXXine, you do not have to watch Pearl. Just recommended that you do see X. And while you can go into this film without seeing X, it's really recommended. You're going to lose a little bit of context clues that lead MaXXXine to where she is, the demons that kind of still haunt her. MaXXXine follows, well, Maxine from X, as she's made it to LA in 1985. She's pursuing fame outside of the adult film industry. She's auditioning for a controversial horror thriller called The Puritan 2, which is going to be directed by Elizabeth Bender, who's played by Elizabeth Debicki. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Who's a bit of a hard ass. She kind of empowers the whole feminist movement of the 1980s. And during this time as well, there was the Satanic Panic, a moral panic consisting of over 12,000 unsubstantiated cases of satanic ritual abuse. It's really interesting read. I recommend reading into it if you kind of like the true crime, U.S. history era. Some allegations involved conspiracy of global satanic rituals, including children sacrifice, all the bad words you can think of. One of the reasons I read that the panic even occurred or kind of took shape included the start of 3 films, all that have to do with Satanism: Rosemary's Baby from 1968, The Exorcist from 1973, The Omen from 1976. I highly recommend, again, reading into this era. It's quite interesting, and interesting to see how it plays out, and especially if you're a Dungeons and Dragon nerd like I am, there's a little bit of that in the history as well.
The follow-up to a film that possessed a nation. The Puritan.
Another thing that takes place during this time is the case of the real-life serial killer Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker. I'm not one to glorify serial killers. This person was a horrible, evil person. He also cultivated a strong interest in Satanism and the occult. So you can kind of see how it ties into the whole satanic panic. And by the way, if anyone doesn't know this, how he was captured was actually by civilians who chased him down and restrained him, which was pretty cool. Awesome. Anyway, if that tip of history interests you even more into watching MaXXXine, hold on, because you're going to be disappointed. The film wasn't my favorite out of this trilogy. While stellar performance by Mia Goth, the film had pacing issues. I did not like Kevin Bacon's character, John Levitt, PI, hired by a mysterious figure to find Maxine in his lousy Louisiana accent, if that's what it is. I felt Giancarlo's character, Teddy Knight, while had some shining moments, they didn't utilize him for his talent. And one of the other persons who stood out to me was Moses Sumney, who plays Maxine's friend and video store clerk, Leon. I wanted to see more of him on screen, not much of it. And it was a bit of an empowering female film that I can get behind with my own experience working in Hollywood. It's just not over the top, and it's especially set in the time. Uh, It works within the story. However, the execution is lackluster with this. Maxine is basically set up to be the final girl again and saves other women who are being preyed on in Hollywood. However, with the pacing issues, editing choices, and having multiple storylines that lead to nowhere, this movie feels very watered down from the predecessor of X. I loved X. X speaks to me on the curse of womanhood and how women appeared to be valued back then and taking that power back. This felt more like a revenge tale, but no real revenge, I guess. You know what? Let's get into spoilers. Spoiler warning here. I really want to talk to spoilers. So again, mark it here. If you go see it, come back, see if we align. Hopefully we do. If we don't, comment below. Let me know what you thought about it. But spoiler warning right now.
Ain't nowhere to hide this show business. You never work in this town again.
All right, I'm going to make this really easy. I'm going to break it down into what I liked about the film and then what I did not like about it, with some context that will give away the movie plot and ending. I'm literally looking at the list right now in front of me of everything I wrote down after getting out of the movie last night. So we're going to start with what I liked or loved about the film. First off, right off the bat, Mia Goth's performance as Maxine is elevated here more than X, in my opinion. She's darker, able to switch emotions off so fast, it's eerie and creepy. X made me like Mia, but Maxine made me a fan of hers, and I would be interested to see any future projects she's in. The throwback to 80s slashers and that era where we got, in my opinion, the best horror slashers right ever. Everybody knows the typical ones, but I'm going to list off a couple that I do like. April Fool's Day, My Bloody Valentine, Sleepaway Camp, Prom Night, the list can go on. You can see the influence here that Ty West is trying to do. Moses Sumney's Leon, near and dear to my heart as a horror fan. His killing was different than the girls that were victims, that were pretend victims of the Night Stalker. It was personal to Maxine. I liked it. The effects artist played by Sophie Thatcher, the scene where she's life casting Maxine. I've been both life casted and have life casted other people. It was bringing up really great memories of my time working on movies and the amazing teachers I had over the years. Aesthetically, this is a grungy 80s of LA. Color palette is fantastic. Clothing choices are great. Cinematography is really impressive. Really brought me into the 80s. The throwback to X with Jenna Ortega's character, her father is wearing her face on a t-shirt in the protesters for this cult-like church that's protesting during the satanic panic outside of like the film industry areas and stuff. Pearl showing up as a ghost, haunting Maxine, especially in the Psycho house, which is fantastic. The run through backstage at Universal, which was really cool because I recently was able to do a backstage tour of those areas, and watching her run through there and knowing that I have actually stood there, that was really cool. And the mix of the real world of the fictional and the use of the classic Psycho again was great. And Lily Collins' head in a suitcase at the end. That was fantastic. I loved it. Where Maxine is backing away and a suitcase falls downstairs, opens up with her head and a couple limbs and stuff.
If you need to read off the sides we gave you, just go ahead, all right?
I know the lines.
Now, let's talk about what I did not like about this. First off the bat, if you were expecting more of the Night Stalker like I was from all the promos and marketing, you'd be wrong. The Night Stalker is used as a reason why the bodies, the women Maxine knows, keep showing up with like Satan symbols on them. Remember in X, there's like a religious aspect of her being a runaway from a cult-like church. If you recall what was playing on the TV in X and her line, I will not accept a life I do not deserve. That's what her preacher dad would have her repeat. The movie actually opens up with a old video of young Maxine repeating this, and if you figure out who the big baddie is from that point, then you and I are on the same wavelength. The first kill Maxine does also bothered me a little bit. It is some guy that's stalking her, in which she turns the tables on him, points a gun at him, has him stripped down naked, have him do a little sucky on the gun, and lays down on the ground, and where she uses the heel of her shoe to smash his testicle. Very close-up effect, by the way. What I got was the tables turning on SA, where women are able to switch that table and be the predator in this case. However, Maxine doesn't have any consequences for this. actually, throughout the whole movie, Maxine gets away with pretty much anything she wants to do. Anything she dabbles in, anything at all. And I can understand that with X because you're in a rural area, but this is LA, man. And especially since at some point she has cops actually tailing her. So yeah, I didn't really care for it. I can understand the meaning behind it. I just think it didn't have the punch or the execution in that scene that I think they were going for, in my opinion. The cops, played by Bobby Cannavale and Michelle Monaghan, I think it's called. I'm so sorry. Again, I'm really bad. If you've seen my reviews, I'm really bad at names. Did they just say, hey, let's just get typical dumb cops from horror movies? Because they did nothing. They didn't give anything. Because they should give them an Oscar for just being these dumb cops. We're going to bring it back. Kevin Bacon's accent and his character, John Levitt. So once he finds Maxine, because he's paid as a PI, he follows her at a scene where she gets out of a car, takes keys in her hands, and stabs him. Again, broad daylight, no consequences to this. And at this point, he decides he's going to kill her. Tries multiple times, actually. Runs through Universal with a gun, trying to kill her. I don't know why. As a PI, I would assume you kind of get mixed up in these kind of things. Why are you trying to kill the person that this other person who's paid you a lot of money to find? Made no sense. That it just, I didn't see a reason why. Yes, he got punched in the head with keys, but I'm sure he's dealt with this kind of line of work. Tries to kill her multiple times until her entertainment lawyer, Tenny Knight, has him basically crushed in a car. And all I could see was, is this Gus from Breaking Bad just pulling out the mafia moves? Because that's what it felt like. Now, the ending, it turns out to be her father, who was the one that hired the PI, if you didn't pick up on it from the opening. And it moves her to the best part of the movie, where he's putting together an exorcism to have Maxine play a part of it during the whole satanic panic. Now, her father's played by Simon Prass. The whole ending feels really rushed. Maxine's able to escape without being branded, with the cops' help, just showing up, right? They're tailing her, but they're able to show up in this house in the hills, in Hollywood Hills. They end up trailing her father to the Hollywood sign. One cop is shot. The other one is stabbed in the eye with a crucifix, which you don't even see the stabbing. You just see her pop up with a crucifix. And then Maxine is able to take her father out with a final shot, which leads her to being even a bigger star because all the controversy around her father and the cult and these girls showing up missing. Really rushed, felt very watered down. I don't know. I expected more, I think. That's where I'm getting at. I expected more because of all the hype and the trailers and how much I enjoyed X, but it left more wanting more in a
I
bad
don't
way.
like walking out here with that freaking Night Stalker guy in the loose.
The Night Stalker.
Night Stalker?
Night Stalker.
He's terrorizing
Never
Los
really
Angeles.
truly get a tie-in to the Night Stalker. The news is played out about his capture in the background. Maxine is able to run off to the sunset with no consequences. The big baddie is pretty obvious from all the context clues. And while I do like Kevin Bacon, I do love bacon, his character could easily have been cut out of the movie, or at least that awful accent. All in all, I would rank the trilogy in order of X, Pearl, and Maxine. I would give this movie a rating of a 2.5 out of 5. Decent enough to check out to finish the whole Maxine story, but not the punch again I'm looking for. I want to thank you all for joining me on my review of Maxine. My next review will be on Longlegs, which I'm very excited for. And until then, everybody, stay spooky.